Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. It's really good to have you with me. Today, we're going to talk about developing in your child a love of their own curiosity. You will show great affection to your child when you foster their curiosity. Let me tell you something. Kids are innately curious. Oh my goodness sakes. They stick things up their nose. They're trying to figure out how things feel in their body. They'll shove things in their ears. They'll certainly put their hands a whole lot of places they don't belong, whether that's an electrical outlet or down in the toilet or inside of their own diaper to feel their own stuff. Oh my goodness sakes, kids are so curious about things. They're curious about how things feel. They'll stick the weirdest stuff on themselves as well as in themselves. I have met parents and their kids' curiosity made them nuts. Okay? Like, what is wrong with my kid? And the answer is absolutely nothing. I mean, for real. Kids are so very curious. You want to develop and foster that curiosity. You want to love that curiosity and direct it in a good direction. So, whenever I have someone and they tell me how their kid is always into things with their hands, that child's very tactile, I will say things to them like, make sure that child has Play Doh. Don't put it where they can reach it, or you're going to find Play Doh all over your house in places you wish that you did not. And some of the colors of Play Doh, the dye bleeds. That won't be a nice experience for you. But have a small plastic table with a couple of little chairs, and that is the designated play area for Play Doh. And you hand it to them. Almost anytime you find them trying to get their hands into stuff, let them have their hands on the Play Doh for a while so that they're satisfying that tactile curiosity. Another great thing to do with a child who has tactile curiosity is fill up a sink full of warm water with excessive amounts of soap. I call it a mini bubble bath. And let them put their hands in there and help them to understand. Soap is actually a surfactant. Okay, if you don't know what that is, it's something that makes a surface slippery or allows something to move freely across another. So they put their hands in there and let them feel how slippery that is. Even let them pick up a couple of bubbles and like feel the surface of that, how slippery and smooth and silky feeling that is. So you see how a child who's very tactilely curious, that mini bubble bath is really a good thing for them. You can also do this one. You remember my son who did the belly slide across the floor in a whole entire bottle of Crisco oil? Yeah, he's a very tactilely sensitive and curious kid. And so, once I learned what that was, I started doing things like taking him for walks in the wood. I'd let him feel different kinds of bark. I'd say, feel the bark of this tree. He'd be like, oh, and feel the bark of another kind of tree, which is radically different. One literally has small ridges and grooves and bumps, and I'm not going to tell you what kind, because oh my word, these are things you can start to learn. But it's so interesting with your hands. One is very smooth, and a birch, especially when a paper birch, when the paper starts peeling off, there's just nothing like the outside parts of the paper, which are just a little bit rough, and the inside part where the paper peeled back. So you do things for a child who is tactilely curious that fosters that curiosity and satisfies it without doing damage or causing destruction. A lot of kids who are tactilely curious, you want to do things like let them walk barefoot in the grass, let them walk barefoot like in a meadow where the grasses are taller, let them walk barefoot in gravel. They might whine and cry if they've never had their shoes off, but I actually went barefoot most of my life and still do, and I allowed my kids to go barefoot like crazy. They could run down the asphalt barefoot even though it was hot. Actually, so can I. Let your kids experience things that satisfy their curiosity to really love and enjoy their curiosity. This is part of what makes them an excited lifelong learner. So, yesterday we talked about how to find things, how to discover answers. This is a big part of that. Let them love their curiosity. Okay, you'll find kids who are auditorily curious. What's that sound? And you'll be like, what sound? You're not hearing anything. No, I mean, what's that sound? Can you describe it to me? I don't know. It's like I keep hearing a dog or something. Like, what? And you find out your neighbors have a new puppy, but your child who's very tactilely, or pardon me, who's very auditorily curious, they hear this new sound and they're really sensitive to it. Okay, that's the child you introduce to things like music. So you buy him a set of drums. I'm really serious when I say this to you, that one of my grandsons got a set of drums and it made his mother crazy because she couldn't handle it. So if you buy your kid a set of drums, you better have a garage or you better have a basement and put some extra soundproofing in that space. But a child who is very auditorially curious, you want to introduce them to different things. They also might benefit from something like a water fountain in their room when they go to sleep because they're going to hear all this stuff and they might need something that allows them to focus in on a sound that is pleasant and lets them go to sleep. So actually, for a while, I had like a waterfall fountain in my one son's room when he was a little boy, so he could hear that sound while he went to sleep. You can show them things like how to make music with spoons, the different kinds of sound you hear when you bang sticks together, again, of different kinds of woods. And things like I let my one son use a wooden spoon and a set of pans and different sizes of pans, both in terms of their circumference and their depth. And so they would make different kinds of sounds. I would show them the difference between using a metal spoon, a plastic spoon, and a wooden spoon. And so there are just a ton of things to do to satisfy your child's auditory curiosity. And any kid that's about I say 9 or 10 months to around 2, they're going to beat on their tray from their high chair with a spoon or various things. They just their cup. They're very curious about the world and they want to hear sound. So foster that. Let them have that kind of curiosity, and develop that curiosity in them. You can get them the simplest things like I hate this, but I'm going to say a name, and I don't know if it still exists because I haven't had a baby in my sphere for a while, but a Fisher Price xylophone, but the one that actually has the metal, not those plasticky weird things, but the real one with the metal. And you take a mallet, and they can literally hear the scale. So I would go through the scale with my son and, sing things like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I let him experience that kind of sound. We sang together a lot. We just did so many things, and I had canaries. So my kids knew the sound of a bird singing, and we would go into the woods. And they knew the sounds of different birds, the calls they had. We actually got a really neat set of cassettes at the library and listened. So we knew a lot about bird sounds before we went out into the woods to follow some of those birds. Satisfy your child's curiosity. Another area in which you can teach your child to love and enjoy their curiosity is in relationship to their creativity. Okay, you take a kid and he is drawing stuff with magic marker on your walls, and you just want to come unglued on that kid. And he's begging you all the time for finger paints and watercolors, and he constantly wants a new box of crayons or he wants colored pencils. You probably have some kind of an artist on your hands, you think. All kids love that stuff, but I mean, this kid just can't get enough. Okay, so you buy him a big tablet of that paper that you just keep flipping it and flipping it and flipping it that we teachers use sometimes. You get him a small easel. Dad, you can build one for out of scrap wood for like less than $10, or you can go buy one at Michael's when they're on sale. I actually own a few of them. They're not that expensive. You set it up and you let that kid go. You get him a painting apron. I guarantee you he's going to be a mess. You want to be careful. You want to start him off with things that are water soluble that you're going to be able to wash. Or, my favorite, go to Goodwill or Salvation Army, buy him junky jeans, painter jeans, they call them. Those are good. A couple of old yucky shirts. And who cares how much of a mess he makes, and those are his painting clothes. And you hang them up out in the mud room, or who cares, somewhere not in his regular closet. And when he wants to paint, he puts on his painter clothes and he can make all the mess he wants. I would definitely suggest that you get a plastic drop cloth, put it on the floor under the easel, so when she gets a little carried away or he gets a little carried away, you're not going to be all freaking out. Put them always out in the garage so that if a paint gets on the floor, nobody's going to come unglued. And Let your child use his or her creativity. If they're really artistic, the thing that kids usually know about is that kind of art, but expose him or her to different things. Let them see a basket maker at work. Let them see crochet or knitting or weaving. Let them see things like glass blowing. I took my kids to a really awesome glass blowing expedition, and then we went to a Dale Chihuly exhibition at the art museum in Milwaukee. That was incredible. The guy is so good with glass. Let them go see things like that. Let them see sculpture. Take them to see someone who's literally doing some form of sculpture. There's a really good set right now on the web with a new kind of sculpting medium called Paverpol, Paverpol, and that's really awesome. Let your kids have exposure to however many kinds of art that you can, and definitely take them to art museums and let them see exhibits. Even take them to things like summer fairs where people will have watercolors or oils or various kinds of woodworking or ceramics available that they did by hand, and let the child talk to the artist too. Really teach your child to love their own sense of curiosity and the things they're curious about. If they're extremely mechanical, they're always trying to take apart a radio and hooking up different parts of electricity to their Legos and making a Lego car that'll actually go. This part boggles my mind because I told you I'm lousy at electricity. But if your child is very mechanically or electrically or electronically curious and oriented, find things to let them do. Take them to a small engine repair shop where a guy is fixing things like lawnmowers or whatever and going through the dynamics of how a combustion engine works. And if they love aeronautics, then you take them to airports. You even could take them to a place like Boeing and let them see things about how airplanes are constructed, help them to start understanding lift and thrust and drag and all the things that have to do with why an airplane will fly, how it gets off the ground, how it maintains its elevation, everything about that. Let your kid learn to love their own curiosity in the world. If they're biologically or scientifically curious, you get them a microscope, you get them a telescope, you help them start looking at things about anatomy. We had a great book when I was a kid of the human body and then all the systems. So there was an overlay page that was plastic, and you'd see all the stuff, and then you'd fold that page back and you could see more on the inside of the body. Oh my word. Little did I know I was going to grow up and be a nurse, but I loved that book. It was absolutely amazing to me. And so you start to find out where your child's curiosity really leans. But let me tell you, your child is curious. They're curious about life. They're curious about how things work. They're curious about every single thing. And so teach them to love that curiosity. You should learn to love that curiosity also. It's one of the most beautiful things that is very childlike and innocent and lovely about a child. I can tell you that I know it can be frustrating by some of the things they do. Oh, I just wanted to see how this worked, Mom. So I tore it all apart because I had to look on the inside, and you're like, yeah, okay. I'm just acknowledging to you that sometimes it can be crazy, but you want to do it. One last thing, cooking, which I love. And my kids cooked with me every day. And I would literally let my kids feel sugar and feel brown sugar and feel raw sugar and feel turbinado sugar. And I would let them feel flour and feel whole grain flour, feel rye flour. I let them taste it, just with your finger in water and taste it. Um, and butter and the difference between butter and margarine and lard, different kinds of oils, safflower, sunflower, corn oil, soybean oil, uh, today, avocado oil, walnut oil. You just let them satisfy their curiosity. Let them start to develop that curiosity. I can tell you both of my sons are really good cooks, and one of my sons loves to cook because I fostered that love of curiosity about cooking in the kitchen. So flavor and texture is awesome. All of us have to eat, but we can either eat McDonald's or something of a much better caliber. And so I want you to foster your child in terms of loving the things that they are curious about, and it will make their life amazing, really, because if it stays with us and we stay curious, it's a really great trait to develop in your child. The challenge question for today is, what is your child most curious about? If they're two, it might be hard to tell because they're curious about everything on the planet. By the time they're 4 or 5, it's pretty easy to tell. So in this challenge, when you know what your child is curious about, are you satisfying that curiosity? Are you doing your very best to meet that curiosity head on so that they can learn to love what they're curious about? Yes, ask yourself, what is my child most curious about? Thank you so much again for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. I will look forward to seeing you soon. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.